done. Also, before you eat it, make sure to let it cool. Once your parched corn is finished and cooled, it'll keep virtually forever as long as you keep it dry. And I've never had issues with bugs. That may be something to be concerned about in some environments. Traditionally, this could either be carried and eaten just like it is, or sometimes people would grind it up and boil it in sort of a mush. But I don't see really the point of doing that. Eating the stuff cold, it tastes just terrific. It has sort of a nutty roasted flavor. And wash it down with some water. And you've got a trail food that, along with some jerky maybe, or even just alone, should keep you going for a while. These 2 cups, I would say you should be able to eat off of for at least 2 days. I would go ahead and carry it and store it in some kind of a light cloth bag so you can get some air circulation around it. Bon appetit. For making jerky, I use the cheapest, leanest cut of beef that I can get. I've used fattier stuff before, but with marbled meat it's going to be more expensive, and you either have to trim off the fat, or one time I actually soaked it in salt and some spices to help dry it out a little bit, and I wouldn't encourage it. And besides that, beef tallow and beef fat taste terrible in jerky like this. So take your cut of beef, and we'll wind up trimming out this fat. Now, the most dedicated of Neolithic types will have stone knives around their kitchen to cut up their meat with. And that works for trimming it. Although it takes a little longer. It does help tenderize the meat though a little bit, I think. Most people don't keep flint knives around the kitchen though. So for the rest of this, we'll use regular steel knives. Now, the origin of the word jerk comes from, they'd go with the grain and actually tear off the meat in strips. You can do that if you want. It's easier just to cut it in long, thin strips, and the thinner it is, the better. A piece about like that is about right. You can go with the grain, you can go against it. For our purposes, the way that I do this, it doesn't really make that much difference. But go ahead and cut up your meat in strips like that. To dry this jerky, traditionally a lot of people out in the field will take green sticks and make almost like a little grill and start a low fire with some coals underneath it to circulate a little bit of heat and a little bit of smoke to it. I don't do that for a couple of reasons. First of all, it sounds like a lot of work, and I don't think that the smoke is going to give it all that much more flavor. But also, you're running the risk of if you get it too hot, it'll actually start cooking the outside of the meat. And if it cooks the outside of the meat, it can seal the rest of the juices inside of it. And if you let the rest of it dry cool, basically that meat on the inside can go rancid. So the way I do this, you can also put it in a dehydrator. But I just take a piece of string and a needle, and I just sew the strips onto the string, so that they can hang to dry. And you can hang this indoors depending on your climate and depending on if flies and that sort of thing are out. It's winter here, which isn't the best time of the year to hang this. And we had a little bit of snowfall this morning, so it's relatively humid for central New Mexico. But even at that, this should mostly be dry by the end of the day and be completely dry by tomorrow afternoon. So there's one piece ready to go. This is the back porch, and it's not the perfect place to hang it, but if the sun comes out this afternoon, I'll be getting the sun all afternoon, and it's still hung out enough that you got air circulating around it to help it dry a little bit. And that's all it takes to make it. No seasoning needed for it. Just let the stuff dry, and the faster that it dries the better, as long as you're not using heat, and it'll keep for a long time after that. So after the meat's completely dried, it'll darken up. Just cut it down, pull the thread out of it, and here we have our finished Neolithic MREs. Here's the parched corn. Here's the dried beef, which can be boiled, can be pulverized and cooked in with other stuff, and I've had it that way once before, and it's not too bad. But frankly, for the purposes of using it out of the woods, I don't see why to make it more complicated than it already is. Although it's raw meat, it tastes just fine, and it won't hurt you. With any of this, wash it down with some water. And you have a Neolithic MRE. Magnifique.